Thank you, everyone. Welcome back. Would the clerk please take the attendance?
Chair Miller,
Here.
Representatives Pies,
Present.
Young, Kofia,
Here.
Conlon,
Here.
Devendorf, here, Fitzgerald,
Here.
Reingen,
Here.
Nyer,
Here.
Vanderwall,
Present.
Roth,
Here.
Beerline,
Here.
Smith.
Present.
Madam Chair, you have 12 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you. Rep. Heiss moves to adopt the minutes from March 6, 2024 meeting. Next, we will hear a presentation on the Michigan Tree Fruit Commission from Nancy Nyquist. Thank you for joining us today. Please come forward.
Good morning. Excuse me, good morning. I'm getting over a cold, so I apologize for that. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning to talk about the Tree Fruit Commission and give you an update on what's happening currently with the season that we're just getting underway with. I wanted to share a little bit about the Tree Fruit Commission with you. So the Tree Fruit Commission was established in 2014. And that was brought together by the industry, apples, cherries, MSU, the Horticultural Society, MDARD, et cetera. A number of partners came together to address the infrastructure needs at our tree fruit research stations here in Michigan. The priorities of the commission are centered around upgrading and maintaining the fruit research stations, maintaining and funding and keeping MSU research positions relevant. Whoops, I'm gonna snooze the computer restart, hold on. MSU extension positions that are being filled and supported, and also supporting plot fee assistance for industry-supported research. Program renewal, so we're a 232 organization, much like other checkoff groups in our state, and we have a renewal referendum vote every 5 years, and we're up for renewal this past year, and that vote passed in March, so we are going forward with another 5 years, which is, I think, exciting. I've been with the Tree Fruit Commission just about 2 years. I'm their first executive director, so it's been a lot of fun learning about the tree fruit industry in our state and getting to know our growers. The tree fruit industry has more than a $700 million impact on our state. We have nearly 500 cherry growers, just over 160 plum growers, 1,300 or so apple growers in Michigan, and over 400 peach growers. Keeping in mind that many of these folks are apple and cherry growers, or apple and asparagus growers, and they're just not focused on one specific industry crop. So getting into the weather, I think we all can understand that it's been a unique winter here in Michigan. We didn't have a lot of snow. We didn't have a lot of extreme temperatures, and it's been pretty mild. And while we all like those warmer weather days, I'm there too. It takes an impact on our tree fruit industry. So in January, we had a little polar vortex come up through the southwest. Normally, weather patterns would come through across the lake, which provides a great buffer for weather and minimizing some of those impacts. But we had that extreme cold temperatures for a few days in January that did have an impact on our industry, especially the apricots, peaches, and some wine grapes in the southwest part of our state. This map shows you what those extreme temperatures were from October through March of this year. And I believe you all have a copy of the presentation, and if you don't, obviously we can get you one. And I guess I should also have a disclaimer that I am not a meteorologist or a weather expert by any stretch, so bear with me on that information. I think it's important to note that this is about growing degree accumulations. And what I want to really highlight on this slide is in 2012, which is the bright red line that goes all the way up. That's from 2012. In 2012, we had a fruit crop failure here in our state. You can see along the bottom of the slide that all of a sudden in like March, temperatures went bananas. We had some 80-degree days, and they just kept going, and that was really, really difficult. So therefore, we had the failure. The black line, the solid black line, is the average over the last 20 years or so. So you can see where that really differentiated and took off and went crazy and had that wild impact. Where we are right now is on the orange line. That is 2024, and this is data up until about last week. So you can see that we did have some spikes in that temperature around the mid-late February, and that started to cause some concern. But as we got into March, things did level set a little bit more, and so we are cautiously optimistic, even today, that we're going to have a great crop this year. I will pause and say that the next 24 hours, in particular, the early hours of tomorrow morning, could be very impactful to our industry. So cross your fingers, toes, say a little prayer, and just, I guess, we'll see what happens in the next 24 hours. But again, this is showing you the difference. So we're nowhere near what happened in 2012, which is good news, but we are obviously ahead of what the average has been. This is the average date of the last spring freeze over the last 30 plus years. So you can see that temperature varies. I would love it if the last day, if you look down in the southwest part of the state, Benton Harbor area, April 25th is tomorrow. If that was the last day for a freeze, I'd be okay with that right now, given the way things are going. But I don't think that's probably possible. So we'll, again, just looking at the variance throughout our state, and in particular from the northwest all the way down to the southwest through west central Michigan, that's where the primary tree fruit industry is. There is some in the southeast as well, but the bulk of it is in on the Lake Michigan side. So the next few slides I'm going to show you are the critical spring temperatures for tree fruit. I can share with you as information as recent as yesterday. This starts with apples and pears, and yesterday data was provided that in the southwest part of the state, early varieties are in pink bloom or king bloom, and the king bloom is when the flower opens first in a cluster, and that usually grows the largest fruit. Most other varieties, are in that pink first stage. In the southeast, we're starting to bloom, and apples are full pink and moving into king bloom on the ridge. I don't know if you're all familiar what the Fruit Ridge is, but it's an area in western Michigan that's about it's 8 miles wide and 20 miles long, and it covers 4 counties: Kent, Newaygo, Muskegon, and Ottawa. So that's where a lot of our apple and tree fruit production comes out of. So you can see there on the chart, if we're at full pink, apples right now can handle 28-degree temperatures. So that's the critical point where there would be some loss, but it would not be significant. If temperatures went down to 25 at full pink, we have a 90% failure at that point, 90% loss. Whoops. Here's the same information for peaches and plums. Peaches on the ridge right now are 50% bloom, and first bloom is at the West Central Station, which is in Hart, and southeast. For the southwest, they're at full bloom and petal fall. And plums, which are also on this chart, the southwest is mid to late petal fall and full bloom in the southeast part of our state. So again, those temperatures are really critical to watch over the next few hours. In the chart that I showed you with the weather back with 2012 and the failure, I think it's also important to note that in the last decade or so since we had that failure in 2012, growers have a number of other protections at their fingertips. They've invested in more wind machines. There's crop insurance. There's other measures that they can take. Some have even brought in helicopters to fly over to move the air. So there's a lot of ways that we're doing a better job of protecting ourselves. And here we have cherries. Tart cherries in the southwest are at full bloom, and in the southeast, they're at petal fall on the ridge. Sweets are also currently in bloom. And there's cherries in the northwest are tight cluster, and the tarts are at bud burst. So again, if you look at tight cluster in the northwest, that's 26 degrees for 10% damage, and 14 degrees, that's really cold, for 90%. So again, keep the weather, if you've got any weather things that you can do to help for the next 24 hours, and really until probably the end of May, please keep that all in mind. I thought you might be interested in looking what the outlook is for the temperatures as we go forward into May and into the summer. So right now for May, temperatures are looking to be above average, and precipitation, there's an equal chance for both dry and wet season and for the month of May. As we look forward to the summer, when things really start to take off, we are above average in temperature and equal chances again for precipitation. So I think conditions look favorable going forward, and that's why, again, we're cautiously optimistic for the season ahead. I wanted to make sure I shared with you also, it's not just the weather that has an impact. Right now, tree fruit growers and all farmers are facing issues around workforce, depressed markets, supply chain, inflation rates, and regulations. So there's a number of variables that go into all of this in order for the successful season. I would encourage you all as you approach, I know you're just coming off of spring recess, but as you get into your summer recess, if I can help facilitate a way for you to get to on a farm this summer, it would be my pleasure. And if it's not a tree fruit, I'd be happy to connect you with other folks in the commodity space if there's another farm you'd like to get on. But I encourage you all to get out. They're eager to have you visit and learn more about their operation, and I'd be happy to help with that in any way that I can. So thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure to be with you today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I have one. So how much of the fruit crop is sold locally, out of state, and also do you export it internationally?
That's a great question. I don't have the specifics on that. We do have obviously a number of producers sell their crops locally through farmers markets or other markets. We do also have fruit that travels throughout other regions, mostly regionally. And then obviously we do have some exports in our apple and cherry industry in particular.
And I'll take questions. Representative Vanderwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nancy, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Could you just explain a little bit of our tree fruit exports? I know that we battle as a state to make sure that we get our product out. How much of our products stay here in the state? How much are exported out? And of course, we know that the state of Washington is a major competitor. What is kind of our strategy to make sure that Michigan continues to move forward?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Again, I don't have specific data at this point right now on those exports, but again, yes, you're right. Washington, we do compete a great deal with Washington, and even our partners to the east and in New York, a lot of apple growers in New York State as well. We fight for those markets all the time, and the Michigan Apple Committee and USA Apple are really the entities, and Michigan Cherry Marketing Institute are really the organizations that are focused more on those exports, and I'm sure they'd be happy to visit with you on that, but I'd be happy to get that information for you in a follow-up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question or questions maybe relate to the movement of the products around our state, like internally in our state. Do your growers work very much with food hubs in order to distribute food locally, maybe to schools? You know, for example, in Michigan, we have school meals with breakfast and lunch for kids. So I was curious what kind of relationships they have. And then the other question I was going to ask is about processing.
Sure. So obviously we have great relationships with our local communities, and there's a whole, I think anytime we can feed our own communities, obviously that's very important. And they do work, our growers work very closely with the schools to get food into school, our local products into schools.
Have you been hearing much from growers, or is there some body that does more of like the coordination with growers as a go-between, or helping them get connected to people to purchase? Because I think the idea I'm trying to explore here is about food hubs, where it's easier for a grower to just have contracts with a food hub rather than like 14 schools, right? It's like lots of contracting and administration and stuff that maybe you don't want to deal with. But if you have some sort of hub, it might be easier. Have you been hearing from growers that they're interested in that, or maybe not even
I think the majority of our growers, especially our larger growers, already have those markets that they and marketers that they're working with, and their products go into a variety of places, whether it's food bank donations, schools, food hubs, local grocery stores, et cetera, or into the regular distribution. They work with folks all the time on and that. I'm not hearing in particular anything specific to food hubs at this time, but know that, and I know we work closely also with the Center for Regional Food Systems at Michigan State, and they're great partners in helping facilitate a lot of those conversations.
And then the other question about processing is just, are you hearing from your growers that they are struggling to find help with processing, or do they not do as much processing? I mean, these are things that can be eaten without a lot of processing, but I'm curious if there is a need for
Sure.
that.
I mean, I think there are some challenges in the processing space right now. That's a very intensive business, and we have lost a couple processors in our state over the last years, but there's a lot of competition for that as well. So I think the processing market is alive, obviously, and well, but there are some challenges in that space that need to be addressed. There's also a challenge with cold storage in our state too. There's a lot of that freezer space or cold storage space for not just tree fruit farmers, but others as well, for that shelf life extension.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. Thank
Sure.
you for taking the time to come in here. This also goes back to processing. Earlier this year, I was at the Great Lakes Expo and at a round table there, and they expressed some concerns working, in this case in particular, with Eagle. Getting permits that they've been accustomed to getting in the past there, is that problem getting resolved, or are they still being challenged by that?
There are still challenges at this time with Eagle and groundwater discharge permits in particular. There's a number of growers that are having some issues getting their permits renewed or new challenges. I'll just leave it at that, I guess, that are there. We're working hard to try to get that resolved and have put together a group. We've got a coalition of folks that are working with Eagle and others to try to resolve that, because it's very critical, obviously, to our state that we are able to use the chemistries that we need in a reasonable way for that discharge. So we're working on it. But we may come to you for some help if we need it.
Please do.
Thank you.
My second question is, being that it's a warmer season and we don't have that cold freeze that normally kills off some of our invasive species and diseases, are the people out there seeing increased pressures to have to do earlier treatments or repeated treatments to try and keep ahead of various infestations?
Absolutely. I wouldn't say repeated treatments, but I think treatments obviously and spraying has happened much earlier than normal. We're probably 10 days to 2 weeks ahead of where we normally would be in terms of those operations. But we are also concerned, because we had a mild winter, that a lot of those little critters didn't fully take a good nap. So we'll see what maybe comes up this year. But so far, I'm not hearing any reports of too much damage out there because of pests or those kinds of things, or disease.
Just on the cold note there, I passed by Uncle John's right on my way down here every day there, and I caught them out there pre-treating for frost this morning.
Yep.
Representative Heiss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. You had mentioned a labor shortage, and also talking about it seems like the climate has been swinging back and forth much more lately, the past few years. So I'm wondering if you have any ideas about how we can address those legislatively?
From a workforce standpoint, legislatively, I don't know that there's a lot of opportunity for you all to address that. The workforce issue, there's many layers to it. Most of our tree fruit industry relies on H-2A guest worker program, and a lot of the challenges that surround that include the adverse effect wage rate, which is maybe known as the AWR. That currently is $18.50 an hour that have to be paid. And not that farmers don't want to pay, a fair wage, but that, and then they also pay for their transportation and housing. It gets to be close to $30 an hour that they're paying. And the markets for what they're able to charge or get for those contracts that they have for their fruit aren't keeping pace with that wage rate. So I think anything you can do to encourage your congressional friends in Washington to pause the AWR so that we can figure out what's a sustainable way to go about this would be tremendous. I know there's a lot of talk going on about that right now, but Washington isn't getting a lot done right now in that space, so that's a challenge, but we continue to fight and work towards those goals.
And regarding climate and weather,
Yeah.
and that's important. I know there's been some changes in areas, but I'm wondering if there are ideas. You know this better than I do.
Well,
so.
Excuse me. I don't know if there's anything specific, again, that I would say that we can't change. We can't change our climate necessarily through legislation or that kind of thing. But I would just encourage you all again to, use common sense and science, and it's there, right? So rely on those leaders that are making good changes and using good practices.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Collins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was on labor force, but tell me a little bit about what the challenges are with the supply chain.
Sure. So I think one of the best examples I can give you, the supply chain issue, I was talking with a grower in Southwest Michigan just last week, and I asked him kind of the same question. I said, tell me what your latest supply chain challenges are. And he said, well, the biggest one is 16 months ago, I ordered a new tractor because I needed a new tractor, and it arrived last week. So he said, I'm glad I got it last week, but I needed it before last week. So I think that just those delays in manufacturing, and again, it's no secret we have there's a truck driving shortage. There's shortages in every workforce. So I think those all just kind of circle back into one another. But again, I think just making sure goods and services get delivered on time.
All right, thank you. Any more questions? Thank you for coming today and giving such a wonderful presentation. We really appreciate you.
Well, again, thank you, and I will, I guess I didn't get to my last slide, but so thank you. And if there's any questions I can answer in the future for you or connect you with farmers in your district, I'd be more than happy to do that. It's been my pleasure to be with you here this morning, so thank you. And this computer keeps wanting to restart, and I keep telling it not to, so.
Next, we will hear a presentation from Dr. Adam Ingrao from the Heroes to Hives program. This program seeks to address veterans' financial and personal wellness through professional training and community development centered around beekeeping. It will be on Zoom.
Thank you all for having me here today. Let me share my presentation screen. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all about the work that we've been doing with veterans through the Heroes to Hives program and through Michigan Food and Farming Systems in general, the organization that hosts our program. I'll start with a little bit of background about myself. It's been about 8 years since I've had the opportunity to speak with this committee, so I appreciate the opportunity to come back and speak with you all. My background is really kind of diverse and really rooted in agriculture. I have served as a U.S. Army soldier as a Patriot missile fire controller, and am a disabled Army veteran. My disability actually led to my discharge from the military, so I share that experience with a lot of my military brothers and sisters. My background also is steeped very heavily in sustainable agriculture. I am celebrating my 30th year of working in agriculture this year. And that has also brought me to degrees, a bachelor's degree in plant science and agriculture from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I'm originally from the central area of California. I was brought here to Michigan, actually recruited by Michigan State University to finish my PhD in entomology, and really fell in love with the state of Michigan for many reasons. But one of those primary reasons was the agricultural opportunities that are available here in the state of Michigan, particularly in the specialty crop industries. I'm also a co-owner with my partner of Bee Wise Farms. That's where I'm at right now. It's bee season, and we are the largest producer of honeybees in the Upper Peninsula. So unfortunately, I was not able to join you all today in person because I'll be leaving this meeting and going right out to my beehives to get ready for spring split. So in addition to working in the agricultural industry, both on the research side, I also am a farm owner and work in the industry and have worked in the industry now for the last decade. Our farm has been here in the state of Michigan. In addition to the work I do professionally at Bee Wise Farms, I also do consulting and programming with a multitude of different organizations. One of the main organizations I work with is Bay Mills Community College up here in the Upper Peninsula, one of our 1994 land grant institutions, and we've been running a beekeeping program there for the last 6 years to support tribal members with food sovereignty through beekeeping. And then finally, I also work for Michigan Food and Farming Systems as an outreach specialist and lead their Veterans and Agriculture Network, which is where Heroes to Hives is housed. We work not only in programming, but also doing direct outreach to veterans around the state, and then doing advocacy and policy recommendations also for our service members and organizations that work with them. A little background about Michigan Food and Farming Systems. So we're a statewide nonprofit that has been operating in Michigan since 1998. And really our mission is to support underserved communities in agriculture with appropriate connection and resources. The main groups that we work with are veterans, communities of color, women farmers, and Spanish-speaking producers, primarily in Southwest Michigan. And some of the programs that we've administered in the last, I'd say 10 years here in the state of Michigan have been the Michigan Group GAP Network up in the Upper Peninsula. So an opportunity to bring growers together for doing kind of a broader approach to good agricultural practice certification and allowing them to work together. We are also a member of the Michigan Food Safety Work Group and do a lot of food safety audits around the state with organizations that we work with. We provide technical assistance primarily to USDA customers and have had many cooperative agreements with USDA over the years to help connect our farmers with USDA programs. We do advocacy and policy for the groups that we work with. And then we also host the Michigan Family Farms Conference, which this year celebrated its 20th year in the state of Michigan of providing a conference where small growers can come together, family growers, and learn from one another in a community-driven environment. And I just wanted to kind of summarize kind of the main audience I work with being military veterans and kind of where we stand at here in the state of Michigan. So Michigan has 7.8% of our producers are veterans, despite being only 5.8% of the population. So we are definitely working in this sector in a very, very meaningful manner. 13% of our Michigan farms are operated by veterans, so a large segment of the farms here in the state are being operated by service members. And primarily about 55% of those are under 50 acres. So primarily what we see in the demographic that I work with are smaller scale farms under 50 acres. And really one of the things that we see with a lot of the folks that we work with is that homesteading is a very popular activity with military service members. This idea of having some sort of independence within the food system and being able to provide food to their communities. I think what we see primarily with the audiences that we work with is that those individuals that are farming, especially for sale, really are diversified operations, focusing on specialty crops, row crops, livestock, and even things like honeybees, So very diverse operations that oftentimes incorporate all of these aspects of agriculture. One of the things I think that really stands out for service members, myself included, is that when we discharge from the military, we're not done serving our nation. And most folks that serve in the military are looking for an identity that they can really grab onto when they get out of the military that allows them to continue serving their nation. And agriculture is definitely one of those. One of the ways that we market our services to our service members is that this is your opportunity for continued national service through protecting our food security. So the Veterans in Agriculture Network is celebrating its 10th year this year. The network itself has supported over 4,000 veterans here in the state of Michigan through technical assistance, policy recommendations, and educational programming, which I'll wrap up with today, which will focus primarily on the Heroes to Hives program. So one of the ways, or several of the ways that we support our military service members here in the state of Michigan is through direct technical assistance. So this can take many different forms. And one of the things that we do with our service members is one-on-one USDA navigation. So oftentimes, folks like myself who are dealing with injuries like a traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress, this is about 20 to 30% of our population that are post 9/11 veterans. These individuals oftentimes have difficulty advocating for themselves, going into office settings that are unfamiliar, and being handed a bunch of paperwork to fill out. And for those of you that are familiar with the USDA process of getting access to USDA programs through the Farm Service Agency by registering for a farm number, this oftentimes can be a non-starter for veterans because handing them a packet of paperwork and telling them to fill it out for some folks can be a very difficult task. And so what we do with those individuals is we work with them one-on-one to help support them in applying for USDA programs and then also for advocating for themselves. Some of these individuals have a difficult time going into unfamiliar spaces with unfamiliar faces. And so what we do is we will walk them into USDA offices and actually advocate for them as they are filling out paperwork with USDA. In addition to the actual on-ground work that we do with folks that are working with USDA, we also provide guides to support the knowledge of how to work with USDA programs. So guides on how to apply for a farm number, how to work with the EQIP program through NRCS. These are guides that we use to basically familiarize our veterans with these programs and what to kind of expect as they go into these USDA offices to access these programs. In addition, we also host a whole bunch of events. And when we host events, we always try to include technical advisors from organizations like the USDA, but also through organizations like the Michigan Agriculture Environmental Assurance Program, which has been a really great program that we have been able to use to support our veterans through technical service assistance and with being able to get a certification through meat on their farm that helps them kind of stand out from the marketplace as a sustainable operation. My farm, in addition, is a meat verified farm, and we push that very heavily through the veterans that we work with to work with meat to get those verifications. In addition, in the technical service arena, we also connect with peer-to-peer support. I think that's one of the most important things that we do is creating a community of support around our service members. And so myself included as the director of the Vets and Ag Network and the Heroes to Hives program, I work one-on-one with students to really kind of identify, one, if they're currently working in the agricultural industry, how to make themselves more sustainable from both a environmental standpoint, but also a business standpoint. But also farmers that are just getting started. A lot of our service members that are discharging are looking for new opportunities and may have no experience in agriculture whatsoever, but a real desire to work in the sector. And so what we do oftentimes with those individuals is brainstorming, farm planning. I will go out and walk an individual's farm with them, give them ideas about what types of crops are appropriate for their area, and what things they should be thinking about as they're developing out a farm plan. And we work very closely with several different organizations, including VetBiz, which is through the Small Business Administration, to help veterans identify how to set up businesses successfully in that space. We also connect these individuals with resources, so resources that are both agriculture specific, but also specific to the veteran community. And that oftentimes can be things like the Veterans Fund through MVAA and helping individuals identify those types of opportunities to help them kind of get back into a space where they can kind of lead the charge again in agriculture if they're going through some financial issues. We also provide service provider connections. So the VA is one of our main partners through the Heroes to Hives program. So connecting individuals with VA services, but also services that are more local, like the American Legion and the VFW. And we have a partnership with the Department of Michigan VFW through the Heroes to Hives program, where we support individuals with access to VA services like veteran service officers. We also connect to other veterans. I think that's one of the most powerful things that we do as a community program. I believe we are a true community development program, and really connecting veterans with each other is a huge opportunity to make us feel like we're not alone out here in this landscape. Oftentimes, veterans feel isolated when they leave the military because a lot of times they feel like civilians don't understand what they've gone through. And so providing connection to other veterans allows us to come together over something productive like agriculture. And then providing a community of support. One of the things that we really focus on within the Heroes to Hives program and the Vets and Ag Network is this idea that we're not alone. And oftentimes with service members, you're dealing with things like disabilities. About 60% of the folks that we work with are service-connected disabled veterans. And so disabilities are a huge thing within the demographic that we work with. So providing them a community of support and access to resources like Michigan Agribility to help them go through the process of dealing with those disabilities and addressing them so that they continue to be successful farming is something we do a lot of. But in addition to that, we also connect individuals together. And I'll use an example through our beekeeping work. We have our student who has is most senior, I will say, in experience and service as far as length of service, is a Korean War veteran. Is one of our students in the Heroes to Hives program. And he's been beekeeping for about 45 years, but he's an advanced age where the physical labor of beekeeping is not possible. And so in that situation, when we work with folks like that, we oftentimes will connect them with a younger veteran who is much more able-bodied but needs to learn. And so that connection between veterans over something productive like agriculture is something that we do a lot of within the Vets and Ag Network. As far as advocacy and policy within the Vets and Ag Network, we do a lot of this through visibility. So, developing industry partnerships by being at events, developing domestic workforce. I just heard in the previous, presentation, workforce development is always something that is top of mind with agricultural producers, primarily because of our reliance on H2A. It's no different in the beekeeping industry, where we work very heavily. And one of the things that we've been really focused on for the last 3 years is trying to develop a workforce pipeline for the beekeeping industry, which is also an H2A reliant industry. And then connecting veterans within their communities to access resources within their communities. We also focus on developing community priorities. And so this is something that we do directly with the community. So we host focus groups, basically trying to figure out things like how are veterans working with USDA? What are their kind of perspectives on USDA programs? Have they had any issues? We work in this space very heavily in the USDA area. We also work with individuals like yourselves, lawmakers that are trying to identify how to best support veterans in the agricultural space. And then we do work with a lot of organizations at the national level to support the work that we do. The National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition is an organization that we work very closely based out of DC, the National Young Farmers Coalition as well, and then the Farmer Veteran Coalition as well. Our organization, the Vets and Ag Network, actually was responsible about 9 years ago for standing up the Michigan chapter of the Farmer Veteran Coalition. And so we work very closely with these organizations to not only support the goals that we're trying to do, but also the service members that we're working with. As far as the policy that we work on, I just have a little bit of work that we've been doing recently on the federal level. We have provided testimony in the last 2 farm bills, the 2014 and 2018 Farm Bill with the U.S. Senate Ag Committee, and worked very closely with Senator Stabenow's office to identify priority areas for service members and the groups that we work with at Michigan Food and Farming Systems. We also author policy papers that are focused on supporting veterans. And so some of the policy papers that we have out currently, U.S. Farm Bill policies to support American heroes, is really focused on the 2018 Farm Bill and the sunset clauses that were included in the Farm Bill of 2018 that basically veterans can now time out of their veteran priority with USDA, which basically helps them get access to things like NRCS EQIP programs through priority ranking. In the 2018 Farm Bill, there were 2 stipulations that were put into effect for NRCS and FSA, where now you only have access to veteran priority for 10 years after your discharge date. For RMA, the risk management agency, that is 5 years after your discharge date. So essentially, USDA in the 2018 Farm Bill has redefined what a veteran is by putting a timestamp from their date of discharge on how they can access veterans priority, which was something that was put into the 2014 Farm Bill to encourage U.S. veterans to come into the agricultural industry. So we're working to get those sunset clauses removed in the upcoming Farm Bill. Our extension agriculture programs hitting their target with military veterans. This particular paper looked at the Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program, which is funded through the Farm Bill, and how that program has been utilized to support veteran programming across the country. And then we also work in other policy related to kind of lending. So the one publication that we've had out for now, I believe it's a couple of years, do payday lending bans protect or constrain regional economics, looking at how the payday lending ban has affected the military lending near active duty bases and how that has impacted the economies in those areas. Now, when it comes to state level policy, this is something that we've worked closely with a lot of lawmakers on state level policy, but I will say that the pandemic definitely had a huge effect on our kind of connection with organizations like yourself, the Ag Committee. But one of the things that we have done in the past, and you see I have a couple pictures here. I've done testimony to this committee in 2016, and that was with, at the time, Representative Barrett and Representative Miller. Who invited me to come and do a talk about this same subject. So it's very exciting to be here 8 years later to give you an update on where we've come in the last decade. But also we develop policy recommendations. And so one of the things that we've been talking a lot about in our organization is the governor's You Can in Michigan campaign, and kind of reframing that as a recruitment tool for veterans that are looking for opportunities in agriculture, as looking at the You Can Grow in Michigan campaign. One of the things that we feel very strongly about is that there is a huge opportunity for service members in the state of Michigan. However, we are a National Guard state. We do not have active duty bases. So the idea that we're going to recruit individuals out of state into our state for agricultural production from a military standpoint is very difficult, because the folks that serve in our state live in our state. It's not like active duty bases like where I served in Texas. I lived in California and basically served in Texas. And a lot of the folks, when you have active duty bases situated in places, a lot of those folks stay after they leave the military because they've built a rapport with the community and have roots now in those communities. We don't have that advantage here in Michigan. And so this idea that we're going to recruit individuals into our state to do agricultural production, this is something that we could really focus on from a policy standpoint. So thinking of things of like incentivizing farmer veteran relocation and operating farm operations in the state of Michigan. One of the ideas that we have been floating around is expanding the state property tax exemption that is now available to service members that are 100% disabled, but maybe dialing that down to individuals that have a VA disability rating, which would then really open up this idea of Michigan supporting veterans in the agricultural space through the tax exemptions. But also there's areas that we utilize a lot within the veteran community. They're really important to continue funding for. And those are things like the Michigan Agriculture Environmental Assurance Program. That program has been instrumental to a lot of our service members, and not only allowing them to have free access to technical service assistance and figuring out how to set up a farm to be a sustainable operation, but also allowing them this branding opportunity that helps them stand out in the landscape as a producer that is focused on the sustainability of their farm. The other thing that we really have been focusing on, and something that I've had personal experience with, is Michigan Rehab Services. So like I had mentioned, about 60% of the veterans that we work with are service-connected disabled veterans, and those disabilities range in severity. However, access to programs like Michigan Rehab Services to help them access dollars to implement technologies to help them with their disabilities has been instrumental in the success of many of our service members that are farming, myself included. And so we work very closely with Michigan Agribility to basically develop the recommendations for these individuals. And then Michigan Agribility connects our service members with Michigan Rehab Services, and primarily the Farm Rehab Program, to help them access the materials they need to continue farming with their disabilities. Like I said, this program has been instrumental in many of our service members and their ability to continue farming farming with the disabilities that they have from service. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Heroes to Hives program. And the reason I saved the Heroes to Hives program for last is mainly because it is the largest program that we operate at Michigan Food and Farming Systems and is the largest agriculture training program for service members in the United States. There is nothing that even gets close to the numbers of individuals that we train in the Heroes to Hives program. The Heroes to Hives program, actually, when I was here with this committee 8 years ago, we were in our first year of the program, and I discussed this with the committee at that time. And at the time, we only had 5 students in the program. And so we have grown tremendously over the last 9 years. We are a 9-month science-based beginning beekeeping education course, and the course is extremely robust, and that's why it's 9 months long. We're the nation's largest ag training program by far and based right here in Michigan. But our students come from all U.S. states, all U.S. territories, and we also have active duty participants from Asia, Europe, and the Middle East every single year. And so it is a very robust program. And primarily the way that we implement the program is through online training and on-ground opportunities as well. To date, we have over 11,000 alumni that have gone through the Heroes to Hives program. And in 2024 alone, we have over 4,100 students participating in the program from all over the world. And just to put this in kind of a frame of reference for you, so the number of students that we have participating in the program to date is a little over 15,000 students. The best estimates that we have for the U.S. beekeeping industry is that we have somewhere between 150,000 and 200,000 beekeepers. So what that means is that Heroes to Hives has touched 8 to 10% of the beekeepers in the United States have gone through our program. That's a huge number when you think about that. And these individuals are taking the approach to agriculture, in my opinion, correctly by focusing on education first and implementation second. And so what we're providing them is a science-based, robust education to set them up for success in the industry. The way the program works, like I'd mentioned, it's basically a dual approach. So we have an online program that every single student goes through. That's our 9-month self-paced program. And then we do on-ground workshops in 9 states currently, and those are an optional part of the course. So depending on where you are in the country, you have the opportunity to do on-ground training with us as well. The main program, the way it works is students enroll for the program from November 1st to February 28th of every year, and then they participate in the program from March to November. And basically the way the program is set up, these are pre-recorded lectures and instructional videos that we provide our students every single month. We have 43 lectures currently in the program that range from a half hour to an hour and 20 minutes, and then 37 instructional videos, which are task-specific activities in the bee yard, showing individuals how to do inspections, how to apply miticides correctly, how to do management, but also therapeutic practices to help with the issues that you're dealing with that relate to trauma from the military. We also provide a lot of support resources. So we have an entire module that is developed by the Small Business Administration's Vet Biz, which is all on how veterans start a small business. We also have a partnership with Taste the Local Difference here in Michigan, where they provide marketing training on how to market your business. We do a module with Project Apis M, which is a national nonprofit that supports the commercial industry on commercial beekeeping and breaking into the commercial beekeeping industry, both as a business owner and as an employee. And then we have this therapeutic practice element of our program where every single module that we offer in the 9 modules has a therapeutic practice embedded into it, basically to help individuals work with their bees as a modality for personal wellness. And I'll talk a little bit more about that work here in just a moment. The students that complete our program have the opportunity to take a comprehensive exam as part of the program. And if they complete that exam, they get a certificate of completion from us. That certificate of completion is recognized by the U.S. Department of Agriculture as 1 year of experience working in agriculture. As many of you know, there are education and experience requirements for many USDA programs. And so our program counts as a year of experience. And then we also have an educational pathway for our students that are interested in continuing their education. And that's through a partnership with the Great Plains Master Beekeeping course, which is housed at the University of Nebraska. Our students that complete the Heroes to Hives course can transfer all of their credits over to that master beekeeping course, which fulfills the apprentice level of that course. And then our students move on to the journeyman level and then complete their master level, usually in 2 to 4 years, that program takes. And so this is one of the pathways where not only do you get a great education from Heroes to Hives to get you started, but you also have this opportunity to continue your education to become a master beekeeper. Now, as far as our on-ground workshops, we have on-ground workshops currently in Indiana, Michigan, Missouri, Minnesota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and North Carolina, and we are constantly expanding. We are very conscious about expansion. And one of the things I think that sets us apart as a program is that all of our instructors are master beekeepers or entomologists like myself that specialize in honeybees. So the education that these individuals are receiving in our program are coming from some of the nation's experts. And we do that, dovetail that education with these hands-on experiences. Here in the state of Michigan, we currently have 5 locations where students can go to get education. My farm in the Upper Peninsula in Newberry is our national headquarters, and so we do education here every single month during the season. Michigan State University Extension is also a major partner of ours, and so MSU main campus is one of our sites, and then also the Veterans Garden in Paw Paw that MSU Extension operates is another one of our sites. And then we also have partnerships with the Department of Michigan VFW. And so post 2406 in Charlotte, it was our first post where we actually have hives on ground and people come to the post monthly for education and experience. And we also have an apiary at the Ann Arbor post, VFW post, and at the VFW National Home in Eaton Rapids. We just started that program last year where individuals are now coming to the National Home to get education as well. So partnerships across the state of Michigan to help our veterans here in the state get access to hands-on experience, but also the community development aspect of the program as well, where veterans are coming together over beekeeping. We also host a national conference, and our first annual national conference is being held at the University of Minnesota, our partner in Minnesota, at the Bee and Pollinator Discovery Center, June 27th and 28th. So not only are we doing educational programming across the country, we are also hosting national conferences to be able to get our students together over beekeeping. And one thing I will say is that veterans come together over lots of things, but there are certain things that can be very constructive. And one of the things that we've seen through our program is the power of beekeeping and bringing not only veterans together, but military families. And I should have said this in the beginning, is that our program is entirely free to these individuals that participate in our program. And the individuals that are eligible for our program are service members and up to 3 of their dependents. And we really feel strongly that beekeeping is an opportunity to come together as a family and rebuild familial bonds that have been strained during years of deployment that our service members have seen. Many of our service members, didn't see a lot of their children growing up during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, where they were on 3, 4 deployments, where you're gone for 3 or 4 years and you've missed that child growing up. We see beekeeping as an opportunity to rebuild those familial bonds over something really productive. And we have seen this anecdotally and hundreds of our students where beekeeping is really something that has brought the family back together. I'll wrap up today kind of with a little bit about where we work outside of just our general program. So although we do run the largest program in the country for veterans in ag training, we also do a lot of research on this aspect because, like I said, we feel very strongly that there are wellness components to working in agriculture in general. We have been partners with the Veterans Administration since 2019, and what we have been doing with the VA is we've been conducting research on the idea that mental health is being supported by the interaction with honeybees. This work has been done at the Manchester VA in New Hampshire with my partner, Valerie Carter, who is a recreational therapist there and also a beekeeper. And what we've been doing is we've been using veterans that are in the VA system who are part of recreational therapy. We offer them the opportunity to do beekeeping as recreational therapy. The idea being here is that these are not individuals that we're training to become beekeepers. These are individuals that we're using beekeeping as a modality for wellness. And what we have seen in that work, we just recently submitted our first publication on this work to the Annual in Therapeutic Recreation, a peer-reviewed journal through Recreational Therapy Association. And what we have seen in this work is that we have seen decreases in depression and anxiety for individuals that are participating in beekeeping programs. And so the way that we assess those individuals through formalized psychological assessments is that they take an assessment before they go in the bee yard. They do a couple hours of beekeeping activity, and then when they come out, we assess them again. And like I said, we're seeing decreases in depression and anxiety, and also increases in overall perceived health just because of an interaction with honeybees, which is very interesting. And I think for a lot of our farmers all over the country, it is something that we don't think a lot about, is this idea that agriculture and the connection with the land and nature is a modality for mental health. And we are now proving that in research. This is the first research of its kind to come out focused on beekeeping. And really what we're seeing is, as far as this research is concerned with the VA work, is the opportunity, now that we have evidence-based therapy that beekeeping is working for mental health, this opportunity to expand this program to VA hospitals around the country. And how do we make all this happen? So the way that we make Heroes to Hives happen is a combination of donations and grants. And we rely very heavily on our alumni network for donations. We're right now actually in our annual fundraiser for Earth Day week. And what we do is most of the students that participate in the program feel very strongly about the education that they've received and are very generous with supporting the program to make sure the program stays free for future service members who want to access it. So that's one way that we do that. The other way that we do it is through grant writing. And so one of the grants that we're currently on that we were just awarded this last year is the North Central Region SARE Professional Development Grant. This is a grant that we have with the Veterans Administration and the University of New Hampshire's Recreation Management and Policy Department. And what we are doing with this is we are now developing out the standard operating procedures, training tools, and training VA personnel on the therapeutic practices that we have developed as part of the research that we have been doing. And the idea being is that we develop all of these training tools for individuals within the rec therapy and occupational therapy realms of the VA. We give them the tools to do this. We put them in contact with the beekeepers who can make this happen. And then we are able to replicate the model that we have in New Hampshire across the United States for veterans that are looking for alternative opportunities for therapy. And I think that the Veterans Whole Health Program is a prime example of the VA's look to kind of these alternative therapies for dealing with issues with veterans and trauma related to military service. And so we'll look forward to seeing that as part of our national launch of this program in the next 4 years after this grant is completed. We also are just finishing up a USDA NEFA Enhancing Agricultural Opportunities for Military Veterans grant. This was a grant that we received in fiscal year 2022. It's a 3-year grant that we're wrapping up. And this was to expand the Heroes to Hives program. So when we applied for this grant previously, we were only in 4 states. So we've expanded to 5 more states. We've also now putting on a Heroes to Hives conference. One of the other things that we do, we work very closely with Agribility to develop accessible technologies for beekeepers and have been doing that now for 10 years. And we have been publishing in one of our trade magazines, Bee Culture Magazine, on the accessible technologies that we have developed with Agribility. And then we are also developing a USDA guide specifically for beekeepers. So programs like ELAP and programs like that through the federal government, and how to access those programs to support your beekeeping endeavors. What we hear from our students, well, we hear a lot of things from our students, and we evaluate our students very heavily, both when they come into the program and when they leave the program. And what we hear from our students is things like this, that this opportunity to train with bees is something that connects us with nature. I think one of the things as a service member that we oftentimes deal with is this idea of split-second decision-making, and oftentimes those split-second decision-making is life and death. It's very hard to slow down those cycles when you get out of the military, especially if you've been doing those types of things for 20, 30 years. And so what this allows us to do is kind of connect with nature and slower cycles of nature, kind of slowing things down for ourselves. It allows us to nurture instead of destroy. Many of our service members who had jobs in the military that were focused on combat, myself included, as a Patriot missile fire controller, my responsibility was to keep air superiority for our ground troops and make sure that there were safety corridors for these individuals to move through. And so that includes destroying enemy aircraft. And you think about individuals like Marines who are doorbusters in Afghanistan and Iraq. These are very, very difficult jobs that are highly focused on destructive activities. Being able to come back to the United States and get out of that mindset can be very difficult. And so by offering individuals an opportunity like beekeeping or animal husbandry in general, it really allows an opportunity to care for something rather than destroying. And so shifting that mindset. This opportunity brings us back together. This is something we hear a lot of students just feeling like they can belong to something, that they now have an identity. That is one of the things I think what service members struggle with the most. When we are soldiers, when we are airmen, when we are in the Navy, we are individuals who have an identity, and we strongly identify with that. When we leave the military and are told that we can just do anything that we want, oftentimes that's something that's very difficult to get around because you can't identify with anything. You've been doing this job for so long, and now you don't have it anymore. Becoming a beekeeper or a farmer is a clear identity, and that's something that veterans really attach to. It allows us to supplement our income. A lot of our students that we have are 100% disabled, unemployable through the VA. And so they literally can't take a job to supplement their income, but they can do things like agriculture to supplement their income, honey sales, bee sales. It engages our families. And I had mentioned this before. Some of the students that I work with, I do a lot of farm visits, and you'll be really surprised when you have families that are engaged in beekeeping. Oftentimes when I get to a farm, it's the children that are the most excited about sharing their beekeeping experience. And that really underscores kind of this connection that can happen within these families around animals. All of you on the Ag Committee, I'm sure, are familiar with FFA and the work that happens with FFA and how children get connected to kind of the agricultural community through that pathway. We are also offering a pathway like that for students and really focusing not only on just training our service members to be the next generation of American beekeeper, but focusing on the next generation as well to ensure that, just like all areas of agriculture, we can drive down that average age of our farmers to ensure our future food security as a nation. And then it also helps with my mental health. To put it bluntly, I can't tell you how many students will tell you point blank, if it weren't for my bees, I wouldn't be here. And that's something I think that we hear with a lot of farmer veterans, just not in beekeeping, but in agriculture in general. It gives them purpose. It makes them feel like they're part of something larger than themselves, which is exactly what we did in the military. And just to wrap up, I'm going to share a couple success stories here for our Michigan students. One of our success stories is Nick Kaminsky, who is a Marine Corps veteran, and he owns and operates Hickory Tree Farm apiaries in Kent City. When I met Nick, he was in our second cohort of the program. He had 10 beehives, couldn't get them to survive through winter, and was just looking for some way to get out of his regular 9 to 5 that just wasn't fitting him. Since then, Nick has done a whole lot in the last 8 years, including winning the grand prize in 2019 for the Veteran Entrepreneurship Lab at Grand Valley State University, where his project was focused on a queen rearing business for his beekeeping operation. And he won that grand prize, and since then is now a full-time commercial beekeeper who operates bees in several different states and does this full-time, in addition to also offering education right at his farm in Kent City. Everything from beekeeping to mead making is what he really focuses on. So not only has Nick been able to become a full-time beekeeper and do what he loves, but also is now giving back to his community through direct education. The other individual I'll share about is Gary Brown. Gary is an Army veteran, and he owns Gary's Bees in Vermontville. Gary is one of the students that has really taken his education seriously and really gone for the stars. He is now a master beekeeper through the Great Plains Master Beekeeping Program. He finished up that program this year. So he's one of our first master beekeepers that has come out of that partnership. He is also, one of the things that we really stress upon our students is that if you really want to become an instructor, for us, as a paid instructor for Heroes to Hives, become a master beekeeper. And so we have several students that now have gone through this process, and Gary being one of them, who is now being paid as an instructor for Heroes to Hives. And he's the one who runs the the Charlotte post of the VFW and the National Home, VFW National Home Apiary for us, and serves as our VFW Michigan liaison. We have been growing the relationship with the VFW very strongly in the last several years, especially post-pandemic, and really see the opportunity of working with the VFW as not only a model to have training educational sites throughout the state at VFW posts, but one of the big things that we really try to focus on is that connection to service providers. And VFW posts have veteran service officers that are there to help you navigate the benefits of being a veteran. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do with this partnership, is not only have a beekeeping educator, but also someone that can support you with the additional benefits that you may need to access. And this has come out of personal experience with some of our students where several years ago, pre-pandemic, I had a student that came up to me during a workshop who stressed that he wasn't sure where his next meal was going to come from. And so having folks like veteran service officers that are working directly with us gives us an opportunity to connect those individuals who are in need with service officers immediately to address those issues. It takes a whole community to make Heroes to Hives happen, and this is a list of all of our partners across the United States, several universities, large nonprofits, the VA, so a very large community that makes this program happen. And again, this program is entirely free to all of our service members and their dependents. So to wrap up today, I really feel like Michigan has a unique opportunity when it comes to service members and supporting them in the agricultural space. Like I had mentioned, I feel that we have a huge recruitment and retention opportunity with really focusing on the opportunities in Michigan agriculture. The reason I'm here in Michigan is not just because I was recruited by MSU. Like I mentioned, I had been working in agriculture for nearly 20 years at that point. And what I was looking for as we were shopping grad schools was opportunity. And land prices and the specialty crop industry really can't be matched in Michigan outside of California. And if any of you are watching any of the climate models, you should likely know that California has been riding a razor's edge when it comes to specialty crop production in the last 10 years. And so Michigan is one of the very few states that has an opportunity to capture market share as California agriculture industry is declining because of climate change. We have a unique opportunity to capture a lot of that market share that other states don't because the specialty crop industry is so strong in our state. We also have an opportunity by recruiting veterans to address the aging farmer population, which I know we're all concerned about, is this continued idea that we have farmers that are around 60-year-old that are operating our farms and no real pathway for the next generation of farmers to come in. And this is a great opportunity to do that. This also offers us an opportunity to secure skilled talent for Michigan's agricultural industry. The men and women that serve in our military are trained leaders. We have spent millions and billions of dollars on training those individuals to be the leaders that they are in the military. And one of the things that is always really stark for me is that when they leave the military, we oftentimes forget that we have invested so much in these individuals to be leaders. So bringing these individuals to the state of Michigan, not only are we bringing individuals to operate farm businesses, we're also bringing potential leaders of our industry into the state as well. And then finally, supporting our Michigan food security and addressing our personal and financial health and wellness of our veterans. These kind of go hand in hand. Veterans are interested in security. And not only, we went from securing our national security to now having the opportunity to secure food security. And that's something we should all be thinking about, all while being able to address personal and financial health and wellness through opportunities in agriculture. And this will make sure that our Michigan veterans and our agriculture industry all thrive together. And I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with all of you today. My contact information here is on the last slide, and I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you so much for that dynamic presentation, and thank you for your service. Representative Conlon.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you so much, Dr. Ingram, for this incredible presentation. I actually chair our military committee, and I might have you come back and do it again because I had not heard of this program until now. I have a couple questions, but I'll probably phone you and get a meeting on the schedule with you. But it seems like you're doing so much more, and we have obvious problems with mental health amongst our veterans. And we know that, I guess, of our almost 600,000 veterans here in the state of Michigan, less than, around maybe 50% are actually using their benefits. So thank you. It sounds like you're connecting them to resources. It sounds like you're looking at social determinants. It sounds like you're doing so much around mental health, which we have a bill we're working on now in the military committee on mental health. So thank you for your service. Thank you for everything you're doing. I guess I have a question, like, how are you getting the word out about this incredible program? I feel like you should go to Northern Strike and recruit all the National Guardsmen who come to Michigan from all over the country and tell them about this program. It does sound like it's national and you're getting funding, but certainly I'd like to meet with you further and find out how we can help in any way to support this program.
I greatly appreciate that and definitely would be very happy to meet with the Veterans Committee as well. So I'll be real honest. having worked in the nonprofit sector for the last 20 years, I am keenly aware that a lot of really great programs live and die by grant cycles or donation cycles. And that's something that we've been very aware of as we have built Heroes to Hive. So promotion of our program is primarily word of mouth from students. And our partnership with the VA. Because of how lean we try to run the program, so we can ensure that even in the lean times, we can operate at full capacity. We really don't focus on advertising, and we don't do a lot of, we do on-ground, representation at events and things like that, like the Michigan Beekeepers Association conference, but really most of the promotion is done by word of mouth. And it's been very effective for us and very cost effective as well. But I agree with you very much. There are some connections that we can make here in the state that can actually increase that reach as well and make people more aware of the program. We oftentimes hear many times of folks who hear about the program after we've done our enrollment period and can't get into the program that year. So those types of avenues are definitely things that we're thinking about, but also something we're very mindful on the financial strain that oftentimes advertising or just having bodies in many different places can cause, because our focus is really providing a high quality education for these individuals.
Representative Pice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two quick questions. One is the finding more information. I was just looking at the website for MFFS, and it has the Hives, Heroes to Hives program on there. It says how to join the program, and then it says it gives a link to register for the upcoming conference. But there's really no information on how to join the program or where to find more information about that. And then my second question was, could you just real briefly expound on the interest in disabilities and workforce development?
Absolutely. So I will say that the website that we currently have is actually going to be completely updated in about 4 weeks. So there has been a little bit of static on the website currently. We don't have enrollment currently, and the way that we promote the program is through our videos. So we do have basically videos that we call program preview videos that allow individuals to basically see how the entire program is approached and how it runs. As far as the disability aspect of that, and speaking to kind of the work that we're doing there, what I will say is that is probably the most important aspect of what we do to support our students outside of our educational programming, because so many of our students are disabled veterans. And so the connection that we have with Michigan Rehab Services and Michigan Agribility are imperative to make sure that those students have the opportunity to access those programs. And so we work with those programs very closely to make sure that our students know about them. And those come in the program. So we have an entire lecture and instructional video just on working with Agribility and how to get access to those resources and how to work with those service providers so that you can get access to things like Michigan Rehab Services and the farm rehab program.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Thank you again for that presentation. We greatly appreciate the time you've taken today.
Thank you.
Representative Pice moves to excuse absent members. There being no more presentations before the committee and no further business, the committee will stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.